have taken on a patriarchy in a way, very much of a male-dominated scenario in the modern day, is that men by nature are very much identified with the rational thinking, and women by nature have a more robust understanding, the connectedness, and about compassion and about robustness, and also about flexibility in thinking and in feeling, and also one of making a society that is more compassionate and more coherent in many ways, focusing on communication and the rest of it. And what we find is that if we look back into the history books, there were these great women of seniority in all ancient cultures, where you had to go and see the wise woman. You had to go and see the woman who had these messages for you. And most of the men that had any sense of wisdom would go and ask the woman, their wives, their mothers, their grandmothers, and the elders. And there's a huge significance of what they contributed to this world as well. And I think a balance of that approach, the feminine approach with the masculine approach, rather than let's make this about why don't we listen to more women, because I think that dialogue is taking on a useless meaning in an age that is very polarized as well.
The whole idea of yin-yang energy, right? It's supposed to be a circulating polarities with an aspect of each in one another. So it's supposed to be a dynamic whole, but again, back to binary kind of Aristotelian thinking, right? Everything has just been put on its head, and the very idea of masculinity and femininity got weaponized by the ideologues, using people's victimhood and consciousness of victimhood to scapegoat the other and other, so it's just another tool to polarize the population and to make people useless and dependent. Because look what happened to how the feminist movement has kind of metastasized into these highly masculinized women hating men. So there's this masculine energy coming out of women, and then the men became very effeminate, I think, right? A lot of men just became effeminate because it's like they are not allowed to assert the masculinity.
What also collapsing is our ability to navigate these times in relationships. What can you say? What can't you say? What's the right thing to do? And then these same women are saying, but we want a strong man, and we want a man who knows what he wants. But how can he? I mean, he can't know what he wants, and he can't be strong.
He doesn't want to be called toxic, yeah?
And I noticed how the algorithms have been playing on that childlike behavior. Right. Now, can you expand on that? Because that is so important for people to understand, is that you're playing into the same damn game and you don't even realize it.
Absolutely. This is, yes, you pointed to it directly. The group identity is something that is very easy to leverage, because that we've always had to live in communities up until now. This is the first time we actually connected on a global scale, but so easy to then, when you have these algorithms which have exponential power, they can really amplify these lowest instincts. That insidious thing is that you can't really notice it unless you actually detach yourself, let's say for a week, and you start realizing. But until you do it, it really gets under your skin. You don't realize how much you have drifted from a common sense perception of things, and how much you are already being radicalized to overreact to any one of those kind of inflammatory topics. And these what's kind of saddest about this is that it hacks our most humane faculty, which is that of compassion and reaching out to understand the other person, because then we are caught in this double bind of, if you don't hate those people, you are the evil person, basically.
You have no idea how your mind has been shaped and been manipulated, and how you've been being used as a tool in order for you to facilitate this madness that is ensuing. And I call this, again, the age of confusion. So it goes to my point that it's the time right now for each human being to realize that if they don't pause and realize the world that they're living in, they're going to be sausages ready to be turned into mince for somebody else to eat, and someone's going to benefit off that.
Because if we have no values, then the people will come to make their own values ours. Like it's like with those boundaries. If you don't know whether you draw the line, then people will define where the line is instead of you. It's as simple as that. So
is that our attention span in 2015 was 29 seconds. Now it's down to 13 seconds. And that was in 2020, the last statistic was done. We are down to 7.5 second ability to focus. We have the attention span lower than a goldfish. Because in the past, they used to say that goldfish have a small attention span. We have now superseded, because here's the thing that really got to me. Adam, this is what really amazed me. Welcome everybody to another exciting podcast with myself, Adam Widowski, where we'll be exploring some fantastic topics. We've been building up a theme. We've been talking and exploring all these wide-ranging subjects to do with language, to do with leadership, to do with culture, to do with how we need to find our way in the world with AI and all the rest of it. And Adam and I were just talking now, and we were thinking about what would be a relevant theme. And, this came out of a personal need, because I was told by a marketing company, could you define your message and isolate it in something that's very clear? And I said, no, I'm struggling to do that. And then I was talking to Adam, and I said to Adam, I don't know why this is, but, I can't seem to narrow my focus down on what I do. And then I realized that, in fact, I cannot be so reductionist. I can't be so single-minded and insist that this is what I am to the exclusion of everything I'm not. And this is the topic that we're going to be exploring today, about how in the modern day times, we need to encompass what we knew once before, a robust human being. And so the theme of this particular podcast is going to be on the new type of human being that needs to emerge for us to be able to sustain and thrive in this particular time that we faced in now. And just to give you a brief background, if we look at what they called scientists, so before, there were scientists, there were astrologers, there were astronomers, there were mathematicians, they were medicine people. They knew about the human body, they knew about the spirit, they knew about the soul, they knew about human beings, they knew about anxieties. I'm just looking at the particularly of the Arab world and thinking back at people like Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, Averroes, as they call them in the West, and some of these people that we know about. And these people didn't have, they would find a new cure for a particular disease. At the same time, they would find out the Earth's circumference. How did they be able to do this? And we look at Da Vinci as well, Leonardo da Vinci and others. So it's time for a new type of human being. It's not brand new, it's building upon what we already knew, and to bring in what has been forgotten, because in the modern day, we think that life started 200 years ago, and that people didn't think or didn't philosophize or didn't understand the universe as well as we did. So after that long introduction, I'd like to again welcome Adam Widowski. Thank you for joining me again.
Hello, it's a pleasure as always. What a wonderful introduction. I think it's spot on. It's like the complexity of the world, it has accelerated so much these days that without a philosophy of life, it seems like there is no way you can make sense of it. So we all need some sort of philosophy, moral philosophy, philosophy of knowledge, and we need to understand ourselves, and we need to be able to be articulate. At least can't be experts at everything, but at least have understanding, a reasonable understanding of how different disciplines and areas of life affect each other and affect us and societies, and on the level of technology, on the level of society, and on the level of culture as well. I think without this cross-disciplinary approach, we are not really equipped well going forward. So I agree with you completely that we have been trained by the paradigm of the Enlightenment to hyper-specialized, as we have agreed already. And this reductionist approach left us kind of lost, because when things started to crumble, especially when the COVID hit and a lot of the latent inconsistencies within our systems revealed themselves, it became overwhelming for many of us. And I think now is the time to actually re-evaluate what that new human being should be, as each time it has been in history. Like you said, Da Vinci, the people of the Renaissance, right? They had to, or before that, they ultimately like a shamanic individual in primeval, tribes before civilizations. There was this shamanic individual who had a connection to the divine, but he was also a healer and a wise person for the tribe, etc. And then every culture, as we scaled civilization, there were these wise entities, these people who had broad understanding of things, but obviously in different stages of culture and different kind of stages of the development of culture, that there was different demands for those people. And it seems like when things break down, there's a greatest demand, because then you need like a general vision to orient yourself towards the world and realize what is important to focus on. And Renaissance was the time like that. And then ever since the Enlightenment, we start to kind of zoom in instead and kind of really focusing on little pockets of reality. And it seems that now we need another cultural enlightenment to actually overcome this crisis that is looming and has been, hitting us. So, yes, a new sort of individual to emerge is definitely something to discuss and ponder on.
Yeah, so Adam, the other thing that I found quite peculiar looking at all of this, like you mentioned, the shamanic way, is that a lot of these knowledges have taken on a patriarchy in a way, very much of a male-dominated scenario in the modern day. And of course, this is not a feminist statement or a women friendly statement. It's accepting the reality is that men by nature are very much identified with the rational thinking, and women by nature have a more robust understanding, the connectedness, the energies of Mother Earth in that way, and about compassion and about robustness, and also about flexibility in thinking and in feeling, and also one of making a society that is more compassionate and more coherent in many ways, focusing on communication and the rest of it. And what we find is that if we look back into the history books, there were these great women of seniority in all ancient cultures, where you had to go and see the wise woman. You had to go and see the woman who had these messages for you. And most of the men that had any sense of wisdom would go and ask the woman, their wives, their mothers, their grandmothers, and the elders. And there's a huge significance of what they contributed to this world as well. And I think a balance of that approach, the feminine approach with the masculine approach, rather than let's make this about why don't we listen to more women, because I think that dialogue is taking on a useless meaning in an age that is very polarized as well. So for me, integrating the wisdom that we've all, if you look at the Eastern disciplines, if we look at Lao Tzu, we look at the concepts of the Tao Te Ching, we look at Zen, and we look at the Vedas, and all these ancient knowledges as an example. Even when we look at the Sufis, many people don't realize is one of the greatest Sufis of our time was known as Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi. Ibn al-Arabi is very famous, and most of his teachers were women. And I can say the most profound change that happened in my life, being a man, is that me seeing the world one way and then encountering my spiritual master, who was a woman, and she taught me about love. She taught me about these higher dimensions of being that cannot be seen from ultra rational thinking. And so I think one needs to incorporate that as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. I think it's been, for me personally, it was a great breakthrough when I actually learned to embrace the feminine aspect of myself, because um, I'm quite sensitive. I always liked art. I always liked music. I played in bands. So this is also quite in communication, and so there's a very strong I'm quite in touch with my feminine aspect. But I suppose because of that polarized kind of discourse about these gender issues, and it's so distorted. It's the whole idea of yin yang energy, right? It's supposed to be a circulating, opposite, not opposites, polarities with an aspect of each in one another. So it's supposed to be a dynamic whole, but again, back to binary kind of Aristotelian thinking, right? It was everything has just been put on its head, and the very idea of masculinity and femininity got weaponized by the ideologues in our society, and basically, yeah, but using people's victimhood and consciousness of victimhood to scapegoat the other and other, so it's just another tool in my, the way I see it is it's just another tool to polarize the population and to make people useless and dependent, like childlike nation, infantilize society, and to develop, to engineer this childlike nation beholden to the state, to corporation, to ideology, to whatever there it is out there, to liberate them, while the real liberation lies in our own realization that we have to accept those aspects of ourselves. That's the real shadow work that we are weak at, or we consider to be weak at, or ugly, or envious, or jealous, or anything that we are basically ashamed of, or makes us feel. So in the case of, let's say, because look what happened to how the feminist movement has kind of metastasized into these highly masculinized women hating men. So there's this masculine energy coming out of women, and then the men became very effeminate, I think, right? A lot of men just became effeminate because it's like they are not allowed to assert the masculinity, and everything in a culture is basically making them weak and pushing these boundaries we talked about. So it's basically everything is inverted. It's the whole polarity between the masculine and feminine, which is the source of creation, which is the source of life and healthy relationships, has been completely inverted, distorted, and we are in the place where it's very difficult to even have a relationship that is functional.
Yeah, that's so true and so powerful as well. And it needs to be spoken about, because I mean, relationships are collapsing all over the place, but what's also collapsing is our ability to navigate these times in relationships. What can you say? What can't you say? What's the right thing to do? And then these same women are saying, "But we want a strong man, and we want a man who knows what he wants." But how can he? I mean, he can't know what he wants, and he can't be strong.
Doesn't want to be called toxic, yeah? Because it's
Yeah. So I get it from both perspective, and I think you hit the nail on the head, and I want you to expand on this, even though it's a slight diversion, but I need you to expand on this, that this dialogue that's being created and sort of encouraged, this victimhood, this adolescent framework that plays out in us, that we say us versus them, and it brings out that primal ugliness within us that we need to defend. And then we find, like my wife was saying one day, yeah, but she's not like that. And I said, you don't need to stand up for the entire women race, because they're not going to be there for you later on, even though you feel that you need to be. And so for me as well, like if I'm in a particular office and I would say, yeah, but we're not like that. And I'm saying, Rashad, why are you defending all these guys? They're not going to be there for you later on. But then it's almost this polarization of this is how I identify myself. And I noticed how the algorithms have been playing on that childlike behavior. Now, can you expand on that? Because that is so important for people to understand is that you're playing into the same damn game and you don't even realize it.
Absolutely. This is yes, you pointed to it directly. The group identity is something that is very easy to leverage because that we've always had to live in communities up until now. This is the first time we actually connected on a global scale, but until now we've always lived in communities and tribes and in villages and families and so on. So obviously we really care about being part of a community, especially. Sorry, I'm drinking fizzy water again. Next time, still water. So it's so easy to then, when you have these algorithms which have exponential power, they can really amplify these lowest instincts that by using kind of referring, getting our attention through the targeting our emotional center of our brain, the limbically hijacking us. Basically, there's a bias. So there's a confirmation bias, which shows us stuff that we already know and we are more likely to engage with. Then there's the emotional aspect to it. So it bypasses our frontal lobe. So we don't have to, there's no way, we don't have the time to critically assess what we're seeing and what we're reading. And then it hacks our group identity, basically. So we end up in these echo chambers, right? And the insidious thing is that you can't really notice it unless you actually detach yourself, let's say for a week, and you start realizing. But until you do it, it really gets under your skin. You don't realize how much you have drifted from a common sense perception of things, and how much you are already being radicalized to overreact to any one of those kind of inflammatory topics, and that effectively that undermines your capacity to discuss and to communicate in a clear way and even think as a result. Because if you get limbically hijacked all the time, you get addicted to it, and you're getting kind of minutely re-traumatized, mildly traumatized each time you're being presented from your social media with information about some injustice happening to that or other minority group that you seem to be empathizing with, while another person on the other side, maybe in another state or another part of the world, who has ideologically opposed to you, will see their own version of their own ideology being the best one and the worst version of your ideology. And it's basically, that's how the polarization actually fractures society and makes even democracy, the process of democracy, impossible. The process of communication itself breaks down like that. So yes, and these kind of, what's kind of saddest about this is that it hacks our most humane faculty, which is that of compassion and reaching out to understand the other person, because then we are caught in this double bind of, if you don't hate those people, you are the evil person, basically. So it's the toxicity of it. And at the same time, if everyone is so kind of desperate to have a purpose, have a mission that is genuine, because everything is just plastic around us, so easy then to drag people into one or another, this cultish kind of thinking of, I'm a victim of that, and then I should, pick up a weapon and go out there and serve justice.
Yeah, Adam, very, very good point there. And it takes us back to the theme of, I could give you 1,000 reasons. And I think if you watch some of the previous podcasts, you'd see so many reasons why it's so important for the human being of this time to be alert and to be awake and to be cognizant of what is going on inside of them. Because as soon as you mention that there is people with motives, you're already branded as a conspiracy theorist. But I'm here to tell you that there's no way you can think that this world runs without someone having a specific agenda and some political party trying to manipulate and shape a particular opinion. And we're not talking about the old days, which was very clear, of we trying to make you think that the Germans are good and that the Americans are bad. Those days are over. It's because we're in an entirely different era right now, and you have no idea how your mind has been shaped and been manipulated, and how you've been being used as a tool in order for you to facilitate this madness that is ensuing. And I call this again the age of confusion. So it goes to my point that it's the time right now for each human being to realize that if they don't pause and realize the world that they're living in, they're going to be sausages ready to be turned into mince for somebody else to eat, and someone's going to benefit off that. This continuous loss of focus and this desperate need for purpose in a world devoid of purpose is going to cause you to become a tool, because they are playing on your primal needs of I need a purpose, I need to be kind, I need to be compassionate, only reiterating the words that Adam has so beautifully explained. So then it leads me to this beautiful story of a man that came up and saw the Buddha, and he said to the Buddha, "What is it about you? Are you some kind of healer?" He said, "No." He said, "But why is that such light about you? And it's almost like you can see through me. What is in you?" He said, "Nothing special." He said, do you do some spiritual kind of stuff?" He said, "No." And this man kept on insisting, "But tell me, my friend, what is it that makes you the way that you are? Because I can see something different to you." And the Buddha said, "I'm awake." That's all he said. "I'm awake." And we live in the age now of people that are asleep. They think they're awake, but they're fast asleep. And when you're fast asleep, it's very easy to be manipulated, and it's very easy to be caught up into these things. And we're not talking about whether they manipulated you into voting for Trump or voting some other clown at the White House. Yeah, they are clowns. You can't say that because it's a democracy, right? But what you're doing is you're destroying your own social fabric, your own relationships, and your own ability to find joy. You're not realizing that part of this process is that you won't know what you are and who you are. And so that's why it becomes of primary importance for you to get to know yourself. And that's what my great desire is. And I think, Adam, if I can echo the same message to you, which is what I want to go with, is to say, we don't have any choice right now. We have to awaken, and we have to become individuals of the nature of people during the Enlightenment and of the wise people of different ages, because we have to define our own situation. We have to define our own way of existence, how we're going to have relationships, what our identities are. And so we need to explore that. And I would like us to further this in other episodes as well, exploring that. So Adam, I'm going to just comment on some of the important things that I think the tools that human beings, man and woman, teenager and child, need to encompass and have right now that are primary importance right now. So I'm going to take a personal journey into myself, and then I want you to do the same. For me, philosophy, which is the interconnectedness or knowing the nature of the reality that you live in as the simplest forms. You don't have to become a quantum physicist. You don't have to become, a great philosopher, but you have to have a philosophy that you live by. What is your rules? What is your wisdom? What is your rules of engagement in this world? You have to get that. Then you need to have a scientific mind. You have to have an understanding of how you process information in what you view as scientific, because otherwise you're going to have to buy into what somebody else is saying about science is. So you have to go back to the history books. You have to research what science was and what science is right now. And then we look at spirituality and the spirit and what you embody other than your physical manifestation of body and mind. What else makes you who you are and what you are? And that's really important. Then the other thing is self-awareness. You have to be aware of yourself, of your shadow, of all your biases and all your judgments. Otherwise, you're going to let other people play on it, and you're not going to know yourself as well. Adam, at this stage, I'd like you to add on to that if there's something that I missed as well.
Yes, spot on. I think self-knowledge absolutely is kind of a gateway even to the rest of them, because You can have all the technical knowledge and academic knowledge you like under the sun, but if you don't know yourself, you're still vulnerable. You still, you just have this outward knowledge, but if you don't know your soft spots and your blind spots, it's easy to, there will be people who do. There will be magicians of the mind who will, be able to manipulate, get through the back door to your mind. So self-knowledge and self-awareness. And I think what is quite critical, I'm glad you said that both scientific and spiritual, whatever that spiritual may be, but it's basically what we, on the basic level, what we're talking about is the capacity to connect with other human beings and have some set of values, that there is something sacred in your life, like something that you would rather die than give up. That's all that there is. So to know that you have some sort of moral philosophy, like people would say, oh, you can't have that because, like, what do you mean moral philosophy? Like, it's been debunked. It's like postmodern philosophy has, this deconstructed that, and that's true. Obviously, that's not to say that postmodernism has no weight in this argument. But the point is, like you said, we can't simply afford, because if we have no values, then the people will come to make their own values ours. Like, it's like with those boundaries. If you don't know whether you draw the line, then people will define where the line is instead of you. It's as simple as that. So I think, so we need the kind of moral philosophy. Then we need like a philosophy in terms of like making sense of the world. So like more epistemological. How do I know that I know, and what does it mean to know? And all of that means that I think we just must accept that there is no easy fix for anything, because I think that's the main ill of this age, isn't it? Everything is like, it's so easy to believe that like technology will solve everything, and the corporation and the state will solve everything for me, and the more people think that, the more we're digging ourselves into this predicament we're stuck in. So I think doing the hard thing, having an ethic of actually investing your time and effort into something worthwhile long term, and sacrifice short-term gain for long-term, or short-term loss for a long-term gain, I think, rather than the opposite, in this society of like one donut, or have a donut and eat a donut, right? That's the kind of the a lot of people, I think, have that attitude. They can have everything, but it's just not working this way. It was for a while after World War II, but that was kind of like that was a debt, effectively, wasn't it? It wasn't normal to have that, and now we have to actually come to terms with the consequences of our good times that we had until COVID.
Adam, I don't think just what you said is that we have this idea that's been pushed onto us, that the corporations and the governments have an idea and they will take care of it. What's been currently fed upon us in the age of confusion is not going to lead to any fix whatsoever, but an entire dissolution of societies and of cultures and of families and of values as we know it today. And people may misunderstand that to saying, oh, well, you're talking about becoming traditional. No, you don't understand. When you let everybody on social media have their way and you have nothing that you represent, the goalpost keeps on getting moved around. What you like today will be what you hate tomorrow. And in that process, you're just moving forward and backwards all the time. And in that, you become more confused. And you can see this. I mean, you just need to look at the statistics, right? Let's look at the facts. Let's look at depression. Let's look at anxiety. Look at the collapse of marriages. Look at the collapse of any type of sound relationship. And then the dramatic rise of substitutes for these things, and AI coming upon us right now with entertainment. If you look at what they found on the internet, people want to be entertained. They're not interested in being informed. They find that. So there's this wonderful thing about a post about a billionaire showing off his brand new Ferrari and his brand new mansion, 10 million views. The same billionaire showing you how to get that Ferrari, 10 views. They're not interested. They're not interested in getting that. They want to be entertained. Why? Because there's so much noise going into the head. And then they've shown the attention spans. I've been doing this research on this silence experience that event that I'm running, is that our attention span in 2015 was 29 seconds. Now it's down to 13 seconds. And in the that was in 2020, the last statistic was done. We are down to 7.5 second ability to focus. We have the attention span lower than a goldfish. Because in the past, they used to say that goldfish have a small attention span. We have now superseded, because here's the thing that really got to me. Adam, this is what really amazed me. Think about it. You're a social media platform. You have 10 million people that want to show their products and their services and things to help you out. If I keep your attention for 20 minutes, how the hell am I going to show 100 million products? What I can do is make sure that if your project what you're selling is more than 29 seconds, I don't show it to anyone. In the past it used to be 59 seconds. I just did a video, and you know what an Instagram influencer told me? He says, you got to bring that down shorter. I said, I've just composed and compacted a 30-minute explanation into 59 seconds. And he says, it won't do. People don't have that attention. So it makes perfect sense to make sure that your attention span gets reduced and reduced, so I can show you more products. People don't see that. And then you think about a relationship and this conversation, the average viewership on the internet, I think it's 13 minutes. That's in average, where somebody who's glued in to something by a major person saying an important message, the most important message of your life, the amount that you can attend, your attention span is 13 minutes. After that, you're dead. And then we talk about, and one of these psychologists criticized me and said, how can you link ADHD with social media? Give me a break. You don't need to be a whiz kid. This entire system has been designed for short attention span because it makes sense. How the hell am I going to show you shorts, TikTok, all the rest of it? So the attention economy is what you mentioned before with Shoshana Zuboff's book. That's something that people need to get. And I think we should have a reading list as well at some point.
Yes, you know what? I was thinking about that.
I get a bit passionate as well about it, but it really concerns me.
Absolutely. I think we're missing some references from the last one. I think we should add some to this video, because you see, this is this is a really a major leverage point. Well, the attention spans and the way that system works, and that all those companies are competing for attention, so it's becoming shorter and shorter, and the shorter it is, the more sticky it is. And then what it does to us, to our biological cognitive skills, is downgrading us. It downgrades humans. So basically, and then look at it. This is the Daniel Schmachtenberger's point again from the War on Sensemaking. I think we should link that War on Sensemaking, a series that's five series of 5 podcasts of between 1 and 2 hours each. And it's masterly. The way he maybe laid out the crisis of sense making in our society, it's amazing. And one of the things he said is
say the name again, because I will link it, but just
Daniel Schmachtenberger, and that's on Rebel Wisdom, War on Sense Making series.
Rebel Wisdom,
number 1. Maybe we can link like one part per hours, because that's where I'm actually. A lot of my former knowledge, former learning from Nietzsche, Heidegger, and all of that, the previous classic philosophy and language and everything, kind of really synthesized well, because Daniel is an excellent thinker in terms of synthesizing various areas of knowledge, into a coherent narrative, coherent, perspective. So what he made me realize, actually, which is clear when you hear it, but maybe not so, until someone says it, you don't realize it. So, because our attention spans are getting so downgraded and shortened, we lose the capacity to actually think deeply enough. Because think about it, in order to have a sophisticated, critical enough understanding of something, you have to be able to sustain your attention. And also that sustained attention is right part of your brain. So our right side of the brain, that's another story. I think we can do another episode on Iain McGilchrist's hypothesis, hemisphere, right left hemisphere hypothesis, which is, I believe it will be the big paradigm shift
Please
in.
go ahead and just mention a bit of it. It's important to mention it right now. We'll expand on it later, but go ahead. Tell
Yes,
me a bit about
absolutely. But the point is, look, no civilization was built on sound bites, bite-sized reels or social media posts. So
it.
you had
Exactly.
all these people were writing books and studying for years to work out all and many of the things that we take for granted today. They had to develop all of that and learn and discover all of those laws so that we can develop, can build on it and build technologies around it. But none of that was kind of, on social media and in 2-minute bits. So how can you now? What we see is
59,
that.
59-second bits, by the way. Now it's
Sorry.
2 minutes. It's 59-second bits now.
59 seconds, whatever it is, it's
Yeah.
not enough to make any meaningful, to build culture, basically. So it undermines the possibility of even having any culture, because it's undermining the basis for thinking, like, how can
Well,
you
this is.
think? You
I
can't
think.
sustain a thought, and we
Well,
need
this is.
the complexity is increasing, and human capacity to understand the complexity is decreasing. So this is what Tristan Harris calls the wisdom gap. So the complexity of the world is increasing exponentially. Well, the more it does that, the more all of these developments, such as you mentioned, the shorter attention spans, they are undermining our cognitive capacity of making sense of that complexity. So this is he says, the challenge of our time is to actually align our, to close the wisdom gap. So our sense-making capacity is aligned with the complexity of the world. But for now, it's just going sideways. And
So how do we do that? How do we
well, this is the
align?
question. I don't think anyone has the answer to it now, but
I
diagnosing.
do. I have the answer.
Go ahead. Meditation 24/7.
No, I wish I had the time. Nobody's got time for that anyway.
Exactly.
Because we can't even focus. If you look at meditations right now, people don't even know what that is. If you look at, I clicked on the link and there's this people singing and dancing in it, and I even show people how to do that, because there's actually meditations for people with attention disorders, which is everybody. So clients call me up regularly and say, my child was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and I said, so the whole planet's got attention deficit.
That's right.
You
We
know
all
what?
have attention disorder.
What are you going to do? Put them on drugs? Come on! What are you doing to
Well,
these
it's
people?
natural
So
that they have it. Yeah, with detection.
exactly, yeah. So it's not alarming. But for me, this is my idea, and I think we know what that is, because over time, what I know that sustains my attention is what you mentioned earlier on, is that we have to have a trade-off and say, look, you want that pleasure right now for that 59-second clip, but you're going to get more wisdom by going to read a book and sitting and focusing yourself. And so it's going to have to go against your programming, against your conditioning. But you can't go against your programming and conditioning until you know what that is. Because I'm going to tell you that you're programmed and you've got a conditioning, and you're going to go, no, I don't. I'm perfectly clear. I just love watching 59-second YouTube videos. I have no attention. Right. Okay. Can you read War and Peace then? Oh, but I don't need to, because I can get that in the 59.
Right.
And now
Summary.
AI will give me a summary in 5 seconds. Why do I have to waste that time? Because I got more important things to do. What do you got to do? Watch your next video clip. So attention is a muscle. And that's what I show my clients to do. And meditation has got profound impact on it. But remember, meditation comes from the Greek word to become familiar with. To become familiar with. If you're not familiar with your thoughts, with your feelings, with your perceptions, with your biases, you're an idiot. You're a drunkard. You're drunk in a society that will take advantage of your drunkenness, throw you over here, and you're just going, oh yeah, I hate this guy, and tomorrow, oh, he's not so bad, I'll go over here. You're a drunkard. So what it requires is that to meditate upon yourself, your conditions and your biases, and meditate on, in other words, getting familiar with, can I look at this paper for 10 minutes without wanting to kill everybody around me? And so what some of the mystics used to do is they used to stare at a flame. I don't recommend you do this because you become insane, but you may see things that you never saw before. But to be able to do this, to be able to look at something for a minute, can you? And if you say to me that you've got no ADHD, I know you don't, Adam, because you can read a lot of thick books. Look at this for 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking you to do. See if you can stare at this and not fall asleep for 5 minutes. Okay. And that's the practice. I do believe that we have all the tools and techniques as human beings to come up with this. We know how to do this, and we can talk about that.
We do, and they're mostly in our bodies, really, and it's the management of the technologies that we are biologically equipped with, which is so controversial because all the money is really in not using these, but using the external tech that is emerging, and to become customers of the new emerging markets in biotech and whatnot.
I love that we have technology already. We're just not using it.
We have always had this technology, and I think in this beautiful project of yours, fostering a new human being and the development of a new human being, I think it's inevitable in a way that I believe a reasonable proportion of human population will and are already choosing to at least partially check out of the collapsing system and actually go back into the body and do get acquainted with their embodiment and the feelings and the thoughts, and actually learn how to be still and build that muscle of just being present. That's what it's about, isn't it? It's no woo-woo kind of spiritual practice, ritual. It's for me meditation or mindfulness practice, whatever you want to call it. It's a survival skill. It's a technology that we have to have in order to survive and to engage without being hijacked, without being without being hijacked, like you say, becoming instruments in other people's hands and other people's and self-interested agencies, agendas. So I think there are many more of these. And for example, the state of flow, there's a lot of talk about the peak performance and accessing flow state. So, and mindfulness is one of the ways of cultivating and getting yourself into optimizing yourself for that. And exercise is another, and gratefulness is another. And obviously, Heidegger talked about that in Goethe was talking about Rausch. Heidegger was talking about Ereignis, this moment of this appropriation. So you are just in the flow, and you actually, everything is flawless, and you can perform something you are usually you need the skill and you need feedback from the environment. There's a lot of work on this done by John Varvaeke. It's a cognitive scientist from University of Toronto, John Varvaeke. He talks about the cognitive science of wisdom and flow state, and these are interconnected. That we could explore that at some point as well. How these essentially shamanic practices now, as we are running out of resources and things are getting tougher and tougher, and cognition is getting downgraded on the mass, we those of us who see where it's going will, I believe, really invest into these technologies and become, because this crisis will make us level up in fact. And because otherwise, if nothing counters us, there's no incentive. But now, if we do understand that there's no future in just following the next new thing, then we will actually, it will force us to evolve. Like every species evolve in hardship, in comfort. You don't evolve. So I think this is, what the New Age people and all the spiritual communities, they talk about this big quantum leap for humanity and evolution of humanity, human consciousness, and in general. I think if there's any substance in these sort of talks, these sort of predictions, that I think the very destitution you refer to, as Heidegger says, who are poets for in destitute times. I think the poetic dimension of life is actually to transcend this crisis by, yes, going back into the body and self-empowerment through discovering these neurotechnologies, psychotechnologies, rediscovering language, rediscovering communication, relationship, but in context of how all of that is weaponized as well, in the context of all of that being somewhere by someone used as a weapon, so we don't fall into the trap.
Yeah. So, Adam, very, very good points there and very good suggestions there. I want to add on a couple of things. Firstly, is that in order for, like we mentioned, meditation in the sense of becoming familiar with yourself, not sitting on a yoga mat at the top of the mountain singing a certain spiritual song, becoming aware of yourself and becoming awakened to yourself is very important to a practice that I do. And this is how I get over my cognitive bias and how I get over the fact that I can be swayed in one direction to the other. And I think it's going to be a vital tool that I believe everybody should inculcate into their lives. I look at, in my private capacity, what irritates me, what gets under my skin. And I notice my biases, not even when I'm online. And then I notice what's in me that I need to encounter. So if I know a topic like that triggers me, I know that and I watch that and say, why does that trigger you, Risha? Are people not allowed to have that particular perspective? Why is it that you feel that they should? And you uncover that and you unpack that, noticing your biases and your judgments. Now, when you go online and somebody's trying to sway you in one particular direction, remember, it's not some guy wearing a ski mask going, you should click here. No. It's done by other people, which is your community, that is part of your circle, that are going, look, I don't agree with you. I agree with that. It's not so easy for you to be swayed in that direction, because you know your biases, you know what irritates you about yourself. And that, again, we're going to self-knowledge here. On top of that, you're going to have to provide quite a few links, which I'm going to send you to, because you gave a lot of golden nuggets here. You mentioned about the body. Now I want to take that further, because we live in a universe right now, in the current scientific materialist dialogue, is that thought is what defines us, and Descartes had a lot to do with that. The Vedas believe that we have 6 senses. We have thought, we have smell, we have taste, we have feelings, we have whatever it is that we have, and sight. Sorry, that's the 5th one. There's a 6th one. It's called thought. Thought is the sense. You see, thought is not what defines us. What we are is a conglomeration of these things: sight, feeling, sound, all the rest of it, smell. On top of that, thought is another sense. So if you are this awareness, watching your thoughts as a sense, watching what you're smelling, what you're hearing, what your mind is doing, now all of a sudden you become this awareness that's being able to navigate everything that's going on, instead of saying, I don't want to think about that. How should I be thinking about this? You're still caught into believing that the nature of reality is thought created, when it's not. And rational dialogue and left and right brain that you mentioned as well, we need to expand on that as well. The world is not rational. You are not rational, and you are not your thoughts.
Not fully rational in any case. Yeah,
of course, we don't deny, we don't discard them, because that's the primary navigator. And if you don't know how your rational mind works, it's of primary importance. And of course, Heidegger and others have spoken about that as part of the definition of your existence. That's very important as well.
Yeah, sure. We've idolized the reason through the Enlightenment, and I think it's time to discover the multidimensionality of our experience and actually embody the experience, but then again look at it, how much it goes against the narrative of the metaverse and having everything virtual. And it will be so inconvenient for so many people to actually preach to encourage and foster some awareness of us being embodied beings, that consciousness is embodied, that consciousness is a biological, where we don't even know There's no evidence of it even emerging within our body. Perhaps it just floats around and we just receive it and we transmit it and whatnot. We don't know.
Well,
So,
I can talk at length about that, so I will at some
right,
stage.
we can speculate, but I think a lot of the speculations by the mechanistic science, wholly unfounded, and as we learn now, deeply harmful in many ways and distorting. How do you, what's the adjective of distorting?
Distortive.
Distortive, is it? Interesting. So yeah, I think I think people are ready now to recalibrate, because there's so many things have dissolved, so many understandings of the world have dissolved, especially over the past 3 years, that we are getting ready for recalibrating our, making sense of what is legitimate and what is not, and having a serious conversation on, some sort of foundational premises of new ways of making sense of the world and new paradigms, and just being curious without speculating and pretending that we know, because we don't. We're not. We're in this liminal phase in between the worlds. We're not supposed to know yet, but we're supposed to be exploring ideas and experimenting and being curious of anything that makes sense to us, and kind of dethrone this obsessive kind of this obsessiveness and compulsive obsession with rationality and reason, and there's really there's nothing much rational in just dead protocols of computational thinking, and calculative thinking. There's so much more to us than merely being able to compute things.
Thank you, Adam. I think we will end off there. It was a fascinating discussion. To reiterate what I was talking about in this podcast. What we covered so many points of is defining a new human being in the phase that we're going through right now, and all the different facets that we have to encompass. And each individual has the responsibility to embody all these dimensions right now, not just for yourself, but for your future and for your children as well, for your community and for your relationships and for your own well-being. Let's forget about responsibility, because we do live in a selfish time where most of us have adolescence, as Schopenhauer so beautifully said. So in that particular time, as an adolescent need, I'm telling you why you need to do this for your benefit, because it's going to benefit you. And as a result of that, will benefit those around you as well. So stay tuned to our next episode. Adam, this discussion is not finished, because we need to unpack these various things. And the discussion that I want to continue with is left and right brain, the age of the poets, poetry, creativity, and artistic expression that will rebalance our over-reliance on rational thinking and perceiving the world just through thought alone.
Which is the feminine, in fact, the poetic.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Right. Which is the feminine energy. So Adam, thank you so much again. It was stimulating as always. And we will see you next week, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Please subscribe and share and get more people to watch this, because that encourages us to do more of this. So thank you again for your time, and thank you for watching, and thank you for having the attention span of staying tuned for that entire period. So you're one of the rare few people that don't have the attention span of a goldfish. Take care. See you next time. Bye, Adam.
Bye.